The Mystical Battle, Episode 2 of The Invisible Artifacts, by Chief Dr. Naja Njoku Levo. 7 years later, the dreaded tomb came floating on the great water. The white fog rolled all around it like smoke. It began to crawl on the land in a manner that was more like a herd of animals. Ikenna saw it first. He grabbed his drum and started beating it as he ran towards the village square. Its sound and rhythm announced the arrival of the tomb, on the water. The villagers ran as fast as they could. How was this possible? What was this white smoke? Defense, first line. Obinna and his age-grade initiates were the first line of defense for the village. Not only were they warriors in combat, they were also well-trained mystical practitioners, members of Umuagu DNA Africa Society, the elite force. In a typical village, each elder had multiple huts fenced inside a family compound. The men farmed and hunted. The woman owned the businesses that sold to the community. Each person had their area of responsibility. The eldest male was responsible for the family Ikenga, which is the guardian that protected them. It was now the time to awaken them. The elders called upon them to rise. The Ikengas rose from the ground and stood as giants in their presence. Their mission was to help all that needed to, cross into the portal. Then the Ikenga stood guard at the entrance of the portal as the last line of defense. They knew exactly what to do. The younger villagers remained to fight. Although the portal was invisible to outsiders, if this fog made it to the portal, it could inadvertently seep through it. This is because the protection spell was taken down earlier that morning to enhance and fortify it. The Dibias did not have time to restore it. They were working hard to do so as the town gathered. The Dibias were left with no other choice but to explain what the evil forest really was. The forest was never evil. It was a sacred place that was created for a time such as this. No one was allowed to go near it. The portal was advanced technology that the ancients left to protect the village. Science and conjuring worked hand in hand to fortify the forest and the portal. When a small breach was noticed in the portal, repairs were needed. That's why it must be protected until the shield could be restored. The villagers hurriedly asked, what happened to the people that were sent to the evil forest? The Dibia said, if someone was sent to the sacred forest, not the evil forest, they were actually sent for secret training on the other side of the portal. The training would teach them discipline and values that they lacked on this side. Obi said,
we must hurry.
The fog was moving slowly, but it's moving faster now. The first battle. Obinna and his team grabbed their protective herbs that were mixed with shea butter. They rubbed it on their faces and the rest of their body. It prevented the fog from connecting and pulling them into the tomb. This was the day that they trained 7 years for. They are ready. The time came for Obinna to step back and allow his chi to come forward. He understood that his chi could defeat these invaders. He also summoned his totem, the majestic African leopard. Obinna closed his eyes. When they opened, they were the deepest blue. The ice-cold, cleansing aura of his chi was present. Then they turned bluish-green, like that of the leopard. His team surrounded him during his change. The roars or the leopards could be heard, even in the neighboring village. Then, as Obinna stood guard, the entire team changed in the same manner. Claws grew from their fingers. They remained upright as the men they were, in full control. Their hair changed to locks. They held their mystical daggers, ready to pounce at any given moment. Their eyes remained melanated black. In this state, they could see ethereal matter. They awaited the signal from Obinna. Obinna balanced himself onto the top of a hut and conjured lightning from his hands. He aimed at the smoke. A being quickly emerged from it. It looked like a small leopard, also called a cub. It was hoping to trick Obinna. Obinna's village honored the leopards, but he could not be fooled. Obinna yelled, "Don't be deceived! It's a shapeshifter!" With his eyes in this state, Obinna could see that it was not fog or smoke. This was its mode of existence and travel in this dimension. The smoke changed into an old woman, and then a floating warrior. Every attempt to outsmart Obinna was thwarted. Meanwhile, Ikenna, the drummer, beat his drum to inform the village that it was a shapeshifter from another dimension. Many of them. It floated closer to Obinna. Not realizing that it was hovering into a trap, the smoke was bound. Obinna used science and ancient mystical skills to confuse the fog. The NCBD symbols on each hut was not just there for beauty. They were marks of protection. This being was in the middle of the village, at the strongest point of the protection, where the 4 cardinal points met. Then the sizzling sound returned. Obinna smiled slightly. Then he sent a bolt of vaporizing lightning at the smoke. There was a large boom. Then the smoke was gone. Small pieces of the smoke scurried back toward the tomb on the water. There was a smell of sulfur in the air, but that side of the village was cleared. Obinna and his team headed towards the neighboring village. The second battle. While Obinna and his team were still battling the fog at the center of the village, Ifeoma and Chiamaka, the twin warriors, ran to their positions. They were on the second defensive line of battle. If there was a breach, they stopped it in its tracks. Some smoke took a different route and did not encounter Obinna. It made it to where the twins were. They conjured a spell and barrier that rendered the main portion of white smoke temporarily immobile. Then they saw a face taking form in the smoke. It looked like them, but it was not. "This thing is mimicking us," Chiamaka said. "Okay." She smirked. "You useless goat," Ifeoma spewed. She quickly grabbed her bag of enzu and salt. She formed a circle around where the bulk of it was hovering. 2 small portions of smoke ripped away in pain. It hovered off in the distance. It was at that point that they knew that the twin warriors would show them no mercy. Chiamaka ran up one side of a tree and threw roots at one of the beings. It dissolved immediately. She jumped back to the ground while looking at the second one. She said, "You're next." The fog changed into a corporeal being but remained frozen in its spot. It didn't faze either of the twins. Ifeoma and Chiamaka both said in unison, "Names have power. Come forward. Let your presence be known." The main fog was compelled to respond while the smaller portion hovered behind a bush in fear. Ifeoma said, "Your name is Ocha Muo." Chiamaka added, "This is the name that we will use to destroy you. Tell your minions to leave this place, or you will all end here. Now!" Ocha Muo was in pure pain. The twin warriors were ripping it apart in multiple dimensions. Ocha shimmied. The twins released a huge burst of purple lightning and enzu. It disintegrated the smoke, and the smaller one that hid in the bushes. They walked over and one sprinkled salt, while the other threw alligator pepper around the area. This prevents them from ever returning to that same spot again. The twins headed back to the village to give their report. They understood the assignment. Obinna arrived at the neighboring village. He heard the women of Umuada telling the useless chief about all of his incompetence. The white smoke was in the village. They didn't know what it was, because the chief never told them that he was warned about it. People have been taken. The chief said nothing. This village chief did not heed the warnings of Obinna. 7 years ago, their chief decided to ignore everything that he was told about this impending danger. Instead of following the instructions of his own Dibia, he listened to his cheating assistant. This was his partner in crime. He became even fatter off of the hard work of the villagers. He looked for ways to make more money. He chose to build a bigger hut for himself and have lots of parties with dancers. He was very wasteful. His villagers were left unprotected, and they did not prosper. It was on this same day that the women of Umuada, of his village, arrived to remove him from his seat and run him out of town. They were tired of his excuses and drunkenness. They warned him multiple times. Each time he would improve for a short while. Then, when he thought the coast was clear, he reverted back to his old ways. The women were very angry. Many of their kin were taken into the tomb on the water. The village was filled with chaos and tears. This lazy, useless chief said nothing. This is how it happened. The smaller white fog scurried from Obina's village. It moved to the neighboring village with speed. Obina and his team ran as quickly as they could to try to protect the villagers. When they arrived, the stubborn chief was in the middle of the town square. The women of Umuada were sitting on him. This is the culture of the people when someone misbehaves. The women of Umuada are called, and they make the corrections. He was warned. Obina called for their attention. They could not hear him in all of the noise. He yelled, "Run!" The fog was catching up with many of them. Some got away. Many were disappearing, one by one. Obina grabbed the hand of a beautiful young woman. It was the one that he was to marry. The smoke took them both. Then a voice cried out from Obina's village. It was Obina's mother. She already knew that he was taken. She could feel it. The warrior Dibia, Obina knew that he had to be taken by the smoke. He was going to the neighboring village to inform his betrothed. Before entering, he rubbed the protection from his skin with a herb known to the Dibia alone. This was the only way that he could stop this evil at the source. He was prepared. It took time for his chi to return to the sacred place inside him, so he waited for a short while. Then he entered the village. He was actually shocked that the chief did nothing to help his people. The fog engulfed the useless, stubborn chief, but it left him on the ground whimpering. When the fog cleared, Umwada was waiting for him. They were furious. He thought he would have probably had a better chance with the fog. 3 months on. The Wata. The white fog took Obina, his wife-to-be, and many others to a foreign land inside the belly of that dreadful tomb. They were placed on a block and sold into slavery. Some were taken to a wharf in a land now called South Carolina. Others were trekked to different ships and carried further north, while a smaller group were taken down to a place now called Georgia. Many of them turned into leopards and escaped to the forests in the surrounding area. They often returned to where their villagers were taken to and helped them escape. Over time, some people started calling all that escaped maroons. That was not accurate for this group. This group was Umuagu that were marooned in this strange place, searching for a way back home for all of them. There was a portal somewhere in this land. They heard of it many years ago. One day they will find it. Tune in next time to find out what happens when the invisible artifact in modern-day Nigeria begins to glow. Ugo is compelled to go to it. When he does, it glows even brighter. So does a tree stump in South Carolina, at the exact same time.